Happy Wednesday. Thanks for watching Behind the Point Spread. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Stitcher, Switch, whatever they call it, and also LinkedIn. Yes, we have viewers on LinkedIn, that business site. Well, even you care about gambling, and it's good to have you along on a Wednesday night. I'm Travis Justice. Good to have you here. Hey, before we get started, a quick reminder, if you want to hang out with me or Dr. Rob, we're going to be a live recording of the Doc Talk podcast presented by Betfred Sports coming up on Sunday. That is this Sunday, November 13th, at the Cross Train Draft Works at Millwork Commons in Omaha. We're going to be there from about 2 to 4. So if you want to watch us podcast live, you can do so. Again, that's Sunday at the Cross Train Brewing Company Draftworks at Millwork Commons in downtown Omaha. So we'd love to see you out there. Come on out. Tonight's is a call-in show. So if you want to talk to myself, if you want to talk to Dr. Rob Zatechka or our good friend Scott Spreitzer, just give us a call at 402-543-5556. That's 543-5556. Make sure to follow us on the social media channels. If you're watching on YouTube, just subscribe to our YouTube channel at Doc Talk Sports. Like our Facebook page, Doc Talk Sports. You can follow Dr. Rob on Twitter at Doc Talk Sports. Very simple. There's a theme there. You get it? Or you can follow me. I'm the oddball here at Travis Create. So let's bring in the smartest men that I know. One's a doctor. One, as my good buddy Ross Peterson says, should be working in the Pentagon because he's a math major. Scott Spreitzer. That actually came up on a radio show the other day. Scott, he goes, Scott should be working in the Pentagon. He's just too smart to be doing this gambling thing. He should be in the Pentagon.
Say hi to Ross for me. I tell him the checks in the mail, all that good stuff. It's been a while since I talked to Ross, a couple of years, but glad to hear he's out there, making things up about my knowledge of math. I love it.
And Rob, you're wearing the Augustana Vikings sweatshirt today. You wore that for, I think, the Doc's Diagnosis this week. I was up in Sioux Falls today. I spent the day in Sioux Falls, and I tell you what, Sioux Falls is a beautiful city, my friend.
It's a nice town. I like it.
Yeah. So I was really impressed with Sioux Falls, and everywhere I drove, I kept thinking, well, I can see why Rob likes it here. I can see why your son likes it here. And Augie's got a nice.
The weather, though?
The weather sucked. It was horrible. It rained, and it was like 35 degrees. It was 75 in Omaha. It was 35 in Sioux Falls. And that 3 hours makes all the difference in the world. It really does.
It's amazing to me because almost every home game we went to, I shouldn't say almost, every home game we went to up there, it was between 50 and 70 degrees and sunny. I mean, It was perfect.
Yeah, not that way now. Not that way. I think it's supposed to snow up there tonight. And by the way, I-29, you get past Missouri Valley, Iowa, and the terrain doesn't change. It's just flat and straight.
All the way to Canada.
Though I don't know what it is in Nevada, Scott, but in South Dakota, once you cross the Iowa border into South Dakota, the speed limit turns 80 miles per hour. I like that a lot.
It's pretty much like that. You get outside of the surrounding Las Vegas areas and all that, and you go into Utah, where you go up to headed towards Reno, for instance, and it's 80 miles an hour, and nobody's doing less than 90. So, it does get you places a little bit faster. However, I have gone to Utah quite often in January over the years, and you get up to St. George, it's not bad. St. George is probably 15 degrees cooler than Las Vegas in January. It rains a lot, and then all of a sudden you get about another 45 minutes north of St. George, Utah, and you're in a blizzard. And I've driven in whiteouts when cars are sliding all over the place. I haven't lived in that stuff since I left Nebraska 30 plus years ago, and I'm taking my kid up there to a gymnastics tournament to Cedar City, Utah, home of Southern Utah University. And we're driving, and all of a sudden that blizzard hits, and my hands are like this. Clenched into that wheel. I haven't driven that stuff since I left Nebraska. My daughter's in the backseat going, "Isn't it beautiful?" And I'm like, yeah. Semis are sliding all over the place.
See, but driving in the snow and on ice should be like riding a bike. You should never forget how to do that.
I forgot.
Yeah, but nobody in Nebraska or Iowa knows how to do it either. We get it every year, and everybody ends up in the ditch all winter long anyway.
Oh, knock on wood, I've never been in the ditch. Knock on wood. You know what's going to happen in a couple of weeks, right? I'm going to be in the ditch. I'll be like,
I've been in the ditch before.
I'm going to call you both and say I'm in the ditch. Before we dive into the football games, are you like super busy now that college basketball is in full swing?
Oh my gosh, it's like it's busy times 10. Luckily, after Monday's 3,000 games that were played, Tuesday and Wednesday. Today, the card all of a sudden dropped off to about 10 games per day. So it's a little bit easier to handle. But that opening day, I mean, it's just, and the thing is, I start my prep work about a month in advance. But that final day before the games, you got to go back in and start checking for injuries, you know, to make sure you didn't miss anything. So it's nonstop. And I love college basketball, guys. I could sit and watch it from 9 o'clock in the morning till midnight. I'm a college basketball junkie when it comes to watching it on TV. But the handicap can really be a pain in the ass. There's no doubt about it.
Let's dive right into the football games tonight. First, if you want to have a conversation with us, you can always call 402-543-5556. Again, 402-543-5556. Our first game of the night. This is an interesting one. It's Alabama at Ole Miss. The Crimson Tide coming off their second loss of the season, still in the top 10 in the college football playoff poll. However, on the road in Oxford, a 12-point favorite. You're over-under here at 64.5, Scott.
Yeah, I was going to give you guys a real quick update on power ratings and professional power ratings, bettor power ratings, I should say, and odds maker power ratings. Kind of tells you how they arrive at the point spreads that they do. If you want to look at the playoff committee, which still I say needs to get an odds maker as part of this playoff committee, somebody who understands power ratings, so you don't make a team number one and they go out and get trashed by the number 3 team in the nation, as we saw last week, and are 8.5 to 9.5 point underdogs. You have an odds maker in the mix. They'll never take a pro bettor, I get it, but they'll take an odds maker, I think, who's got a good reputation. Here is the top 5 as far as trustworthy power ratings. Georgia number 1, Ohio State number 2. Ready for the drum roll? Alabama number 3, Michigan number 4, Tennessee number 5. So having said that, you're talking about a Crimson Tide team that is going in to take on Ole Miss on the road. That is a 12-point favorite despite losing 2 games, including last week. That's how they arrive at that number. It's not like you're going to say something there, Travis.
I was surprised they were number 3. That really did surprise me. You wanted the drum roll, and I could have had one for you, but I that surprises me at number 3.
Yeah, power rating wise, they're still going to be top 4 in the country. They're not, and here's a team that, unless LSU gets upset, has no chance to play in the upcoming playoffs. And I'm fine with that. They lost 2 games. You can't lose those 2 games. You can lose maybe 1 and get to the SEC title game and then prove your worth. So I really don't have a problem with they lost a couple of games. Chances of getting into the NC2A Final Four, so to speak, are slim and none unless LSU gets upset now. But in this game, I got to ask Rob this question. I saw something earlier today, and it just kind of surprised me that it was said, but it wasn't said by a former player. So I'm going to throw this at Rob. There was a guy who said on TV today that Alabama is going to be watching that LSU-Arkansas game that starts 3 hours before Alabama kicks off. And boy, if Arkansas doesn't beat LSU, I don't want any part of betting Alabama because they're just not going to be interested in this game anymore. That sounds like hogwash to me.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Good, thank you.
Thank you
very much.
3 hours before the game, you're not going to be watching another game.
Exactly. I've never played college football, and I'm sitting there going, this sounds like a bunch of crap to me. Or as you put it, bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, I could see guys, kind of paying attention to the score on the periphery. It's easier to do now than it was when I played. I mean, you had to find a TV. You had to hope it was televised.
Sure.
Now you just grab this and you watch it by your locker.
Yeah, so I mean, now guys can do that. So maybe it is a thing now. When I played, you knew who was playing who, but you kind of just chalked it up that you were going to wait till after the game and go find the score at that point.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that because, like I said, I never played a snap of college football, but I heard that and I'm like, give me a break and turn the channel. Listen, this team's 8-0 straight up and against the spread off a loss. But that's the thing, is the non-championship carrot dangling in front of them no longer going to keep this team focused this week. I think it will. It's Nick Saban as head coach. They've had nearly 80 penalties on the season. We've never seen a lack of discipline out of Bama like this, at least since Saban has been there. I think it's a situation where they go up against an Ole Miss offense that does run the ball pretty well. They like to get the plays off quickly in between snaps. So that'll keep a little bit of pressure on Alabama. And, if Alabama plays undisciplined again, they probably don't cover this number. It's as simple as that. I mean, they've kind of beaten themselves twice this year. They had the loss in overtime at Tennessee, and then last week again, they lose late in the game. And, you could say that Alabama is basically 2 or 3 penalties and a closer against last week's opponent from being 9-0. Now, I know the flip side of that is they could have also lost to A&M and Texas and been 5-4. right now. So that's how close they are to being, really, really good and playing for a championship, and really bad for Alabama standards. I do think they go in and get this win against Ole Miss, but I can't lay the dozen points. I think Ole Miss can hang around with that offense.
My daughter lives in Oxford, Mississippi, and I go, and she works at Ole Miss, and I'm like, hey, you going to go to the game this week? She's like, no. I go, at least go hang out in the Grove and go tailgating. She's like, nah, it's just too maddening. She goes, they're like showing up on Thursday already in Oxford, and Oxford's a really nice town. It can't handle all the people that show up, but I think it's going to be an incredible atmosphere. The difference this year that I'm kind of with you, Scott, is that I think Ole Miss can hang around. Lane Kiffin's kind of shut up this year, right? Remember last year he was chirping. He's just kind of laid low with this Alabama game this week. So I think I would like to see him give him a game. And the big question is, Rob, does Lane Kiffin end up at Auburn? Does Lane Kiffin end up at Nebraska? Where does Lane Kiffin end up? If anywhere, he might even stay in Oxford. But I think a lot of people are watching Lane Kiffin in his coaching abilities.
He's still my like fun pick for Nebraska. That if we had to get somebody that you'd sit back and go, okay, this is going to be win or lose. It's going to be really interesting to watch to see how this goes over the next few years. I mean, going back to the point spread, question for Scott, when I look at Ole Miss, I guess my question would be, can they stop, you talk about, can they stop Alabama though?
Oh yeah. It's got to be a high
scoring. Talk about Ole Miss offense. I'm kind of curious, and I haven't watched a lot of Alabama this year.
Sure.
But, I mean, you look at Ole Miss, they've got most of their games are one-score games. I mean, they nuked Georgia Tech, but they're horrible. They lost to LSU, but, I mean, it's a one-score game against Kentucky. It's a one-score game against A&M. I mean, it's not like their schedule was a bunch of blowouts.
No, it's not. It's been pretty good coaching. I think that's got them over the hump in a few of those games.
Yeah, I mean, they had essentially a one-score win over Tulsa, which actually Tulsa looks okay. But
if you're looking at power ratings, I was just clicking on my power ratings there while we were talking. Alabama is only 13.5 on a neutral field. So if you throw in, whatever home field advantage you think, Oxford is worth, it's probably less than 12. It's probably around 10. But of course, you're paying for the name, which is Alabama, if you want to lay the points. Now, it's one of those things where if Alabama quits shooting themselves in the foot, this could be a 42-24 game, but they always, this season at least, they're always shooting themselves in the foot week after week. How many post-play personal fouls have we seen out of Bama this year? It's been crazy. It's an undisciplined football team. So, listen, I'm not going to be on this game, but I lean towards Ole Miss because Alabama's character in 2022 has been commit dumb penalties at key moments of a game. That's been their character. It's not the anomaly this year. And so the thing that scares you, and the reason that I won't play Ole Miss in this contest is because of something that I mentioned, Rob, and that's they will run the ball, but at the same time, they want to get that snap. They want to always be, it's a fast up-tempo type of offense, and that can play against you if you're not moving the chains against Bama. You get Bama out there a little bit too often on offense, and next thing you know, you're down 2 touchdowns, and you got to get out of the game plan that you came into the contest.
Yeah, you're digging yourself out of the hole at that point. Yeah.
So that's what keeps me off of actually backing Ole Miss. But just can Alabama quit shooting themselves in the foot? They'd be 9-0 right now if they could.
All right, let's go to the next game. A lot of people have been asking about this one. We had people asking about this on YouTube even before we started the show tonight. TCU at Texas. The Longhorns, a 7-point favorite. That's TCU is now number 4 in the college football playoff rankings, unbeaten. Max Duggan from Council Bluffs Lewis Central, the quarterback for the Horned Frogs. I was kind of surprised, Scott, that this was a 7-point favorite for Texas.
Yeah, it's like, here we go again, man. Get that odds maker as part of the playoff committee. Listen, this isn't. If I get a little sarcastic or throw a little bit of cynical analysis on this whole thing or this game, it has nothing to do with the disrespect for TCU. I'm not going to be shocked if they win this football game. It's completely 100% driven towards the playoff committee, who doesn't understand power ratings. They just don't. It's as simple as that. You go back to, I think it was like 2013 or 14. When they started all this stuff, they made Mississippi State the number 1 team in the country. They never made it. The number 16 team in the country on November 1st of what it was, I think it was 2014, was Ohio State. They won the national title that year. So this playoff committee stuff is just, as far as I'm concerned, it's fluff. It's for fun. Unfortunately, it keeps some teams that deserve to be around the top 6 at this time of the year pushed way too down in the list. Now, having said all of that, I think Texas Christian's a pretty darn good football team, obviously, but the power ratings have them ranked in the 11 to 14 range.
Wow.
They're 4th in the country when it comes to the playoff committee. Again, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be shocked if they win this game. Texas has 3 losses this year. They're power rated in the 6 to 8 range. They're power rated 5 to 6 spots higher than TCU if you just go. That's why you see Texas laying 7, because if they take playoff power committee ideas and numbers and all that kind of stuff and hang a point spread at a sports book and it says this game's pick 'em or Texas is a 1-point favorite, the books have a chance to get massacred. Pro bettors would be just 100% of the money coming on Texas. And there would be a chance that the books just get their butts kicked left and right in this game money-wise. So they go by power ratings. The power ratings say this number should be 7, 7.5. It's been both this year. And listen, I had Texas last week against Kansas State. And it was a situation where the power ratings were so much better than Kansas State's. TCU has really lucked out this year, not trying to take anything away from them, but they keep playing against backup quarterbacks game after game. The Kansas State game, they're down 28-10 at home. Adrian Martinez had got knocked out with 2 passes under his belt of that game. Will Howard's not a bad quarterback. He comes in, they're up 28-10. He gets knocked out. By the time he comes back in the game, mojo, momentum, all that stuff had flipped sidelines, and TCU was able to go on and get the win. I think if Will Howard or Adrian Martinez are healthy for that entire game, we're not talking about TCU being undefeated right now. So, listen, I think Texas wins this game by 7 to 10 points. I will probably be just a fan rooting for Texas Christian to go into Austin and knock off the mighty Longhorns, give them their 4th loss of the season. But I just wanted to explain the power ratings. This line is where it should be, whether TCU covers or wins or not.
Yeah, I think, because I think a lot of people always ask, they're like, why is a line the way it is? And they're like, well, the books, they're trying to protect themselves. But you just based on power ratings, you're saying there is some protection there, but there's actually a science to it as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I've talked about some of the metrics here before, and you also have to, these guys that are making lines in these books all around the state of Nevada, Central America, all that stuff, they follow this enough to know what team is going to get the public interest. Alabama is always going to get the public interest. Belichick and Brady being on the same sideline in New England always got the public interest. That team was crazy because they were always inflated and they still covered the point spread. But the bottom line is the bookmaker's got to protect himself. And if he lays less than 7 on this game, he's going to get one-sided money on the Longhorns from the pros, not necessarily the public, but from the guys that are throwing out 20, 30, 40 grand a game. They're going to get all that action on Texas if this line was lower.
Dustin wants to know what you're drinking there, Rob. I think it's a bubbly, right? I think it's a bubbly.
Yes, it is a Blue Yummy. Man, I'm trying to be good tonight. I got some work. I got to look at charts later. I'm drinking the non-alcoholic stuff.
Hey, don't forget, you can participate in the show. We encourage you to do so. 402-543-5556. Again, 402-543-5556. Next game on the docket. This one's for me. You got Wisconsin at Iowa. The Badgers a 1-point favorite in the battle for the Heartland Trophy. Look at this over/under. I think the average Iowa over/under this year is either in between like 33 and 36 all year long, Scott. It's crazy.
I want to tell everybody, maybe it's time to reveal this, but Doc Rob does my power ratings. So I told him take it easy with some of these beverages, on Wednesday nights. We're getting ready for the football weekend. So that's what's going on, actually. Wisconsin, laying a point here, total 34.5. And power ratings wise, Wisconsin's 25 to 30 in that range. Iowa around 40th. But
Really?
Here's how close that is. Between like 25th and 40th, you're talking about 3 points. That's all the difference is when it comes to the power ratings. So this line's not out of whack. It's going to sound like the same thing over and over when we talk about the Hawkeyes and the Huskers. For me on this show, it's like we could just put it on replay because I'm not touching the Iowa game. I'm not touching the Nebraska game. I got better places to place my money than those 2 schools or their opponents. And as far as this game is concerned, you got Iowa top defense in college football when it comes to yards per point allowed. They got a nice break, both of these teams, with the weather situation last week against the teams they played against. Iowa was well coached on the defensive side of the football. They didn't make dumb mistakes on the offensive side. Now you got Jim Leonhard, who's kind of coaching for that permanent gig in Wisconsin. So, they lose a game here. It might be a little bit tougher for administration to sign him on down the road. But the bottom line is in this game, I think it's just, the Big Ten is bad. It's poor. I'll be nice. It's poor outside of Ohio State, Michigan, maybe Penn State. Who am I forgetting here, guys? But those three teams, and Penn State's not in Ohio State or Michigan's class. But we're talking 3 or 4 teams and then a so-so conference. And unfortunately, Wisconsin and Iowa are 2 of those so-so teams this year. So I'm going to say the game stays under the total just for the fun of it.
Wow.
But I'm not going to mess with this game as far as the point spread.
You bring up spread quite a bit. Do you ever do the total in college football? I mean, do you ever go with totals? You pretty much a spread guy. And I know I've asked this before you, but I forget.
I would bet at least 95, 96, 97% of my bets in the last decade have been sides without totals.
Really?
I'll play totals in the NFL, but to me, it's just one of those things. It's like know your limitations, as they say in everything you do. Limitations for me have been totals in college football. Same with college basketball. I play sides left and right every day. I probably play 10 college basketball totals in that entire marathon of a season. It's just whatever reason, it's just not my thing. But sides is what I've been able to do well on, so I stick to them. And again, I lean towards the under in this game, but one bad turnover, one screwed up punt, one blocked punt by the Hawkeyes, and all of a sudden it's 1st and 10 at the other team's 15-yard line when you're talking about these low totals. So for sake of the show, I'm going to lean Wisconsin just for the sake of the show.
Last week, Dr. Rob wasn't with us. He was doing that doctor thing. He had to be in the ER.
Always goofing around.
I don't know where his priorities are, but do you remember you were going to ask him a math question? You were going to try to get him on something. Do you remember what that was?
Oh, gosh, that was a week ago.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll bring it next week because it did have to do. I told Travis last week I brought some great metrics, some really deep dive metrics, Rob, and I didn't know that you weren't going to make the show. And I said to Travis, as we were getting ready to do the show, I said, man, I got some great stuff for Rob. I go, man, I'm just going to show him that some of us outside of the world he lives in actually do a thing or two about math once in a while. And I was trying to impress you, Rob. And then, of course, you weren't able to make it. But I'm going to bring those metrics next week.
I think it had to do with like what the charts were like on first down, second down, third down.
That's what it was. You're right. It had to do with DVOA. It's called the abbreviation. And it was, I forget which game. It might have been Georgia, Tennessee. And I was making the case for Georgia. And what it had to do with, Rob, and this isn't the exact thing, but it's along these lines. It was basically breaking down what we use as handicappers on when yards are gained throughout the course of a game. And I might have mentioned this to you way back a few weeks ago that, 3rd and 15, a 5-yard gain off right tackle means squat compared to 3rd and 3, a 5-yard gain off of right tackle. And those are the metrics and the yardage stats that we use rather than, okay, this team gives up X amount of yards per game or they gain X. Who cares? When it's 3rd and 15 with 3 minutes to go in a game and you're trailing by 2 or 3 points and you get 5 yards on a pass because that's the only thing that's open, it doesn't mean anything. In fact, it's a plus for the defense to force that 4th down. And I'll get more scientific next week with you for this. I'll bring it again. But that's what it was based on. And that's the stuff we use as handicappers and bettors, when and how they gained the yardage, not they gained all that yardage. It makes a big difference, I think.
See, that's the kind of stuff I'd love to look at because I think that's information that I mean, it's I don't know if anybody betting at home is going to do that kind of breakdown, but
I doubt it.
I'll tell you what, it's a hell of a knowledge base to have that.
That's why Scott should work in the Pentagon.
That's no fun.
Final game, exactly. That's why you're in Vegas. Final game of the night, Nebraska against Michigan. Look at that, a 31. This has gone from 20, 29, or it's gone from 29, 29 and a half, 30. It's up to you. The last one you gave me, Scott, was at 31. The money lines are out of there, just sick. And the over-under on this, the total at 48. But Chad Carr from ticketsforless.com, he even reached out and said, is this the biggest Nebraska's ever been an underdog? And I don't have an answer to that. I don't know. Do you know?
All I could think of is, wasn't Callahan about a 4-touchdown dog to Oklahoma?
Might have been once. I watched him get beat by 4 touchdowns at Texas Tech and give up 70 points one year.
I remember that. Yeah, that was talk about a shock to the Nebraska fan system. Then I was, it's kind of commonplace now to, lose by all those points, but I remember that was ugly. Bookmakers in this one are basically saying this is Michigan 40-7 or 41-7 in that neighborhood if you look at that side in total. And I think the point spread is telling us that they also expect Casey Thompson to sit this one out. I saw Mark Whipple earlier today talking about the fact that he's improved quite a bit over the last few days, more than he thought he would. So I guess he's questionable. I would consider him doubtful. But then you have two quarterbacks, and I know they both got some action again last week, but are either one of these quarterbacks ready to start Power 5 football games, especially when you're on the road in the big house, especially when you're talking about a top 5 team in the country? And those are power ratings when I say top 5 team in the country. If you want to split hairs and say Nebraska's got a chance, ... to cover, not to win, to cover, then you start saying things like Michigan's played the 71st toughest schedule in college football. We're going to see if that matters. But Nebraska's power rating, which I told you about last week, Travis, it's 81st. They're the 81st power-rated team in college football.
We're the worst
right
team
now
on their schedule thus far.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, so what? 71st toughest schedule. They're not playing anybody in the top 71 right now. They're playing Nebraska.
So
as simple as that.
Does this matter? And Rob, I don't know if you saw what Mickey Joseph said. It was a story in the Journal Star, the Lincoln Journal Star tonight. And that was that Nebraska's cannot play as fast anymore. They have to realize that they're in the Big Ten Conference. And in the Big Ten, when you get in November, teams are going to slow you down. It's ground and pound and really a ball control game. And that playing fast is detrimental maybe to Nebraska. That's a stunning.
Yeah, but we can't play ground and pound either.
I would agree. But that's a stunning admission that Big Ten football is different, right? I mean, because Lord knows Scott Frost didn't think that Big Ten football is any different. I mean, he didn't try to adapt to what the Big Ten was doing.
No, but I remember, Osborne used to talk about that in regards to just the northern half of the Big 8 conference, that you had to be able to run the ball latter half of the season. And if you couldn't chew up clock, grind it out, and get yardage that way, you were going to be in trouble. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that. I mean, I think if you're a fairly elite team, there were some of those Ohio State teams over the last decade and a half or so that were not your classic grinded out kind of teams, but they had the talent they had far more talent. If they wanted to be quick strike, that's fine. But they've got way more talent in regards to being a quick strike team than Nebraska has. But, you go back to football in general, whether it's the Big Ten, the SEC. You look at the good teams in the SEC, they're good running teams. They're teams that have those huge, strong, well-developed offensive lines that can move the ball well, whether it's through the air or on the ground. They can chew up clock and they can control a game. I'm not sure it necessarily matters where you're at. That's just football in general, though.
Yeah.
Think about the really, really bad weather games we see year in and year out. And for the most part, there's not a lot. I get it. It's the weather gets cold. You occasionally get sort of that damp cold or some rainy weather, but it's not like the old NFL films you're watching with Green Bay back in the 1960s with Fuzzy Thurston,
frozen tundra,
exactly, like pulling through the snow, and Bart Starr fumbling the ball, and Nick Duckkiss and all of that. It's most games it's going to be 35 to 55 degree weather this time of year through the better part of November, and once in a blue moon you get some snow, once in a blue moon you get some ice, but it's not like everybody has to be this complete ground and pounder. There's going to be no way to function. But the fact of the matter is, good football teams run the ball well, and I think Mickey's probably alluding to that a little bit in regards to, hey, if you see us slowing things down a bit, he may be just trying to win the damn game as opposed to standard for the Big Ten.
That is Dr. Rob's Diagnosis. If you like the Doc's Diagnosis, make sure to check it out on YouTube. We have 3 really good plays up there right now for the week. It's the Doc's Diagnosis presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. New plays on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays. following the game. If you like what you hear from Scott Spreitzer, because we love talking to Scott Spreitzer and we like to talk to him each and every week, you can hear from Scott on a daily basis. If you want to do that, just text the word Doc Talk to the number 29022, and you're going to get a text message with a link that you have access to all the important pages such as Scott's daily free pick videos, as well as a page where you can sign up and get $60 in Scott's premium member-only picks. Again, the word Doc Talk to the number 29022 for more free picks from Scott 7 days a week. If you want a free bet from Betfred Sports, download the Betfred Sports app in the Apple or Google Play stores. In the states of Arizona, Colorado, and Iowa, you get a $20 free bet by using the promo code DocTalk when you open up a brand new account. Don't forget, tonight's show is for entertainment purposes only. And if you do have a gambling problem, call 1-800-BETS-OFF. Make sure to follow Dr. Rob on all the social media channels. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter for Dr. Rob at Doc Talk Sports. You can follow me at Travis Creates. Don't forget, we're going to have a live recording of the Doc Talk podcast presented by Betfred Sports coming up Sunday, November 13th. That's this Sunday at the Cross Train Draftworks at Millwork Commons. You haven't been down there. It's a really, really cool bar. We were down there right before the season started. Rob and I had a good time, and we'd love to have you join us on Sunday. So, Scott, any parting wisdom from you as people head on into the weekend?
Yeah, I just want to say real quickly, last week when we had the show, we had a caller call in, and he was really complimentary, and it was fun to talk to him for a few minutes. And I think it's really important in my industry to let people know not only when you win, but when you lose.
Did you have a bad week?
I went 2-2-1 in college, which isn't horrible, obviously, but I lost the top play. And so it's been a really good season, guys. 9-2 at the top plays, but I did lose last week, and I wasn't close. I had Clemson. They were never in that game. Dabo, the whole team, all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to say thanks to the dude who called in last week. I do appreciate all the compliments, but I do like to let people know that it ain't easy, and you just got to keep grinding.
What you're saying is you're human.
Well, it ain't easy. Yeah, it's not easy. And I always say, let's put them in the win column, everybody. But sometimes they don't go that way. But I do, because we sit here and talk about, it's great, all these numbers. We do lose sometimes too. It ain't easy.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. This has been the Behind the Point Spread. Make sure to by the way, if you go to our YouTube channel and even the Podbean, we have a conversation with Super Bowl starting quarterback Vince Ferragamo. He started the Super Bowl back in 1980 for the Los Angeles Rams. Remember, he filled in for Pat Hayden, who got injured that year. But we have a nice conversation, a really good conversation. He told great stories. A conversation with Vince Ferragamo on our YouTube channel, also our Podbean page, or wherever you listen to your podcast, you can find it as it came out today. For Scott Spreitzer, for Dr. Rob Zatechka, I'm Travis Justice. We will see you next Thursday. We're going to go Thursday next week with another Behind the Point Spread. We'll see you then.